have Jeff, we have Heather, we have, I know it's Taylor Morgan Connect. He was going to be at the panel. But we have this open panel now. And that question that somebody asked during our presentation is much one of the challenges we are facing for this coming season. And not only this coming season, the panel will lead with these 3 questions. The first question will be, how can we address the constraints to move from 0.3% to 1% of THC content in hemp? That is a concern right now with a lot of farmers. And somebody in the audience can share some of the feedback. What do you think about this, Jeff, for example? Can you provide some feedback about this?
I would be happy to help.
Oh, thank you, Taylor.
I think that there's already been a change in the perception of the USDA because the original threshold of negligence for a hemp farmer was 0.5%. And in the final rule, it was moved to 1%. And the other major change that happened in the final rule as the industry has been developing is that instead of having to destroy your crop, if your crop came in beneath the threshold of negligence, then you are able to remediate your crop instead of have to destroy it under certain conditions. That being said, what that tells me is a few things. And I also want to mention that the Missouri Department of Agriculture did issue emergency rules and adopt that as part of the state regulations in order to further help protect people who are working in the industrial hemp industry. But it's important to recognize that even when the plant is growing in the field, there's more than a 0.3% variation on the plant itself from one side to the other, depending on which side gets more sun and which is facing south and the soil conditions across the field for the genetics. But 0.3% is somewhat arbitrary because it's beyond the testing capacity, which also presents us with further challenges in the testing industry of establishing methods that can be utilized in order to provide good certificates and COAs that allow hemp to be marketable in the industry. And I think that the move as a state to try and have a 1% standard is important, but we'll have to gather much broader support because right now that would also involve working with at the federal and the state level and across other states. Although I think as a state, we can stand out if we can get that support and make that move and set the example as we have so far in the industry and have others adopt it as something that doesn't put undue harm on those that are participating in the industry. This is a very important issue because it has to do with perception and also more specifically with understanding the depth and complexity of the genetics of the plant. And I think 1% is a goal that we should be shooting for. And we're going to have a lot of participation across the federal and state agencies in order to do that, because if we were to do that as a state, it would put our own program outside of the scope of the currently accepted program that we have, which is already one of the better programs in the entire country, but it would not put it in compliance with the USDA final rule. And that may make things difficult for our Department of Agriculture and the people here in the state that we rely on in order to support agriculture broadly across all of our lives, and the families and farms that are trying to integrate this as a product. I think so. I'm in favor of it, but it needs work and it needs a voice and it needs support. And I think one of the most important parts of that is for the academic side to recognize the limitations of what even the equipment can tell us during our analysis, and look at true observation instead of just statistics to back up laws that aren't based on our observations. I hope that helps.
It's very, very good points what you brought here. Yeah, this thing is a macro thing that has to be addressed by different levels. We had some questions in the chat. Ms. Karen, are you available to read? Maybe not.
Yes, I am. There was a comment here. It is, I think we need to understand why the 310% before we make any suggestions. Dr. Acosta-Mensah, do you have any comments on that?
Yeah, I put the comment there because the question is why the 0.3? Is it because, I mean, if you go beyond that, if you go beyond that and the crop is hot, what would be, in terms of security, what would be the effect on the population? Because when you go beyond that and the crop becomes hot, I think that in terms of securing the crop, it will be more costly, than actually leaving it the way it is now. That's what I think. So as we are discussing this, we should be thinking about that one too. Because if you plant and then, it's 1% and somebody gets hold of that 1% and can be in a way detrimental to that person, then of course we are not doing ourselves any good. So that's my contribution.
Thank you. There's some more comments here. There was one, maybe a greenhouse with different lighting. The next comment, the psychoactive component measurements, question mark. Wait for someone to answer that.
Our testing facility can look at most of the metabolites from hemp. And whether it is psychoactive or not, maybe they're working with the medical research team or animal research team. We can figure, we don't have any collaborations going on such, but any interested parties can do that. But we can measure, we can identify and measure with our new infrastructure over here.
There were some other comments here that I'm backing up. Dr. Babu mentioned to everyone that the Midwest Natural Fiber got us set up for fiber processing at Sykeston. And also other fiber processing facilities are coming up after the funding support from the MODA. And looks like I've got a new message. We are updating the Lincoln University Hemp Institute website, and please look for events and news. And that website is on the chat, and I believe everyone is able to click on the chat button and get the link.
Very good. I just want to ask a question. How the organizations like Association of Hemp Producers, like Taylor, you can share more about how the lobbying process is going on to go in that direction at the national level. Is some updates on that regard? So it's just a concern local concern.
You know, our concern is really, as the Missouri Hemp Trade Association, is that we're able to represent the industry that we are building here together in Missouri. The stores, the families, the farms, the fiber processors, grain, across the board. It has been quite a pleasure to see Missouri really set the standard for the country and have other states and even the USDA adopt some of the things that we have in our program that that stepped outside of what the initial regulations are. So the voice of the industry here in Missouri as it grows, and we bring that directly to our representatives, and that we hold this within our own hemp industry and not put us in a position where other parts of the industry overreach what is already legally protected federally and state here for everybody that's involved. That is a risk that we don't want to see people taking.
Yeah.
Because there's our in our third seat, and people have put their lives and effort into it and built brands and run test plots. We have fiber producers, including Midwest Natural Hemp Fiber and others, who have only put in a little over 500 acres, but still put us in, like, I think the top 5 of fiber acres. And that's going to double, quadruple, and quintuple again. There are facilities going in across the state. The Department of Agriculture, with the support that's coming from the UAA, who have actually adopted some of Missouri's programs, have made reimbursement grants available so that on the fiber and grain side, for those processors, they'll be able to have some support to help grow it. And I think we have a lot farther to go on all of these fronts. But as an industry, Missouri stepped forward and was unique in building something where we are the one state that follows the 2018 Farm Bill and the Hemp Farming Act and regulates the product to the point where it's harvested and certified by our Department of Agriculture and then put into commerce from there as a marketable commodity. And we do not require additional registrations beyond that. And I think the idea of a free and open cannabis market really does belong to the hemp community and the industry that we've established for Missouri. And I want to see us grow that forward and not have it get lost in other conversations that may be happening in our state and other parts of the country, because it relies on research and academics, but it also relies on everybody and the thousands of stores and hundreds of families and thousands of people who have jobs that could be in pretty trouble if those lines are crossed. And we have to stick to our guns with what we've already started. We've already set the example for the country, and I think we have a really good opportunity to move forward with that. And I see all of the partners that are involved putting their best effort forward, from our departments to the universities to our small businesses and our farms and the agricultural base of Missouri, and every retail store and the hundreds of thousands of customers that are served. So I think if those points give an outline of what's important to really push for as a state, And I think all of those things we've already been doing, and we need to protect those. I hope it answered your question, Alizar.
Yes, it's very good feedback. Heather, do you have some comments?
I think all that was really well said. I do want to mention that if we did, if the THC limit was raised to 1%, it's other countries are doing this, so it wouldn't be something that's completely new. However, I think it would be beneficial for it to be on a larger scale, federal level versus state. Switzerland, Australia allow farmers to grow THC levels of 1%. The Czech Republic has the set THC limit at 1%. And then Italy has 0.6%. According to the statistics that Alan shared from 2020 production being 10%, having issues testing hot versus last year, I was, I think he said 99.5% didn't have any issues. So it seems like there's some improvement in that. So I'm glad to see that is lowering and that more farmers were able to be in compliant. But it's definitely, I think, moving in that direction. It is gonna, take some time, and it definitely needs to be very carefully thought out in order to progress the industry.
Very good. Very good. Thank you. We have 27 minutes left, so we got 2 more questions to go. Another concern during the meetings we are having today was about the market for hemp. Like, it looked like some people say, one person in the audience say that he wants to start growing hemp this year, but he doesn't know where to sell it. So let's see if we can get some feedback from you guys. Jeff mentioned that he's growing a processing facility in Southeast Missouri. Can you share more about developing markets for hemp, Jeff? You are still around. I don't know if he's around.
Yeah, I'm on here now. Yeah, if you're talking about the open market for hemp, as I described earlier, that we put in a processing facility in Sikeston. That's drawing interest from a radius of miles, from our farmers. But but with that, the industrial hemp for fiber and herd processing operation, is basically a first step of separation, I'm going to call it. And so what we're doing is actually, separating the fiber and the herd. And with that, one of our main goals of, getting this going was to enhance the visibility of what the hemp plant could be used for in a practical, economical way. And so we've actually, as I say, we're creating about 4 to 6 sufficient raw good materials that we're sending out into the for testing in the insulation world, in the animal bedding world. We're looking at it in the construction world, such as hempcrete, and and which everybody is pretty familiar with all them. But but what we're actually doing is we're taking the steps to be able to say, okay, here is the material, here is the testing that can be done, and so now give us the feedback back of how we maybe need to manipulate and grow the plant so to be better suited for some of these markets, the strength of the fiber, the fineness of the fiber, the durability of it, into the textile world and everything. So you know, that's part of our, you know, that's part of our business model, is to try to create that path, or to create that knowledge out there for, you know, for our fellow farmers, for our fellow entrepreneurs out there, you know, in the, you know, in the hemp space in the state of Missouri. And, you know, and that's why we're, you know, collaborating and working with Lincoln University, because a lot of that is going to turn around and focus on, you know, the seed genetics and the improvements of it. That's going to be able to say, you know, okay, Missouri farmer, you know, all this research been done. We found the end markets that's wanting this type of material, and we got to process it this way, and we need a seed developed for it. So I see a lot of good practical uses out there that's going to fall in line. I think a lot of them are going to come to fruition, but you know, somebody like us, Midwest Natural Fiber, had to take the first step and say, okay, we actually have to be able to grow and produce and process that plant, that crop, that material, so that so some of those things can be started.
Sure. Yeah, I think we are kind of behind in the industry, say 50 years behind, right?
Yeah, you know, because as I had a very long conference call yesterday with some people, you know, with this direction in mind, and as I described to them, you know, the hemp plant itself in general has been behind lock and key for 75 years, and so that's left you know, the genetic enhancement of the seed, the performance of the seed. It's left everything, you know, tabled, where nobody's been able to, you know, work on planting equipment, harvesting equipment, processing equipment. There's been no ambition there. So, you know, so we've got a long ways to go in a short time to get there. And that's why it's going to take so many good, you know, people in their field working together, all the way from Lincoln University, all the way to the state of Missouri, all the way to the, you know, local businesses, to the local farmers, you know, and being able to collaborate and put all this together to make it something positive. You know, one of the things that I say sometimes, you know, if you look at hemp and you kind of look at it as it's broke down, hemp, helping employ Missouri people, you know. And so you know, so I think that's kind of our goal. That's what we're looking for. And I think it's just going to take a bunch of us, you know, doing the right things at the right time, and everybody getting in step to make it work.
That sounds very good. Hey, what will you respond to that person who asked the question about where to sell the hemp this coming season? What will
I
you?
would like to know how it's the one on processing.
Oh, it looked like there were a question for that response to her, I guess. But are you starting collecting farmers hemp this coming season? Are you buying hemp?
Who was the question to, LSR?
To you, Jeff. Not to Jeff.
To me?
Not to Jeff. Because he is talking about the processing facility for hemp, and we have people who want to grow hemp, but they don't know where to sell it. The question is, are you buying hemp this coming season?
Yes, yeah, you know, I understand your question now. You know, one of the things that, you know, in real time, I call it, and economically wise, you know, again, because there is just there's so many things that have been left untouched here as far as hemp in the last many years. There is not a lot of processing that you know, that is actually going on, such as what we're doing. And it's hard to say right now. Logistics is a big issue. Economics, the input cost of growing the crop itself, the value of what a processor can pay for it, process it, turn it into a raw good. So right now, if I had to draw a circle, and I said a while ago, there's kind of a limit there. I would have to say that if you was wanting to grow hemp this year, to try to be able to take it somewhere, unless you wanted to, do it for your experience and burden the expense, probably within 75 or 100-mile radius of a processing facility is where it's economically going to fit, because of the volume and everything else, so we will be more than happy to work with anybody in the state of Missouri that wants to grow some. We'll assist them with trying to get seed, assist them with our playbook. We'll help them with harvesting procedures, baling procedures, and then we can, work with them on logistics of trying to get it to our processing center. So at least some of these people can be able to get in there, put their toe in the water and experience growing it, because that's truly what it's going to take.
Good. Do you have some feedback, Taylor?
Yeah, I think that it's good to see, even with the small amount of acres that was planted this year, that Missouri's still, I think, what did Alan say? We're in the top 5 in the country, even though it was only 600 acres or something close to that. But there are processing facilities that are coming online. I was able to attend a nice meeting a week ago with Randall Batts from Rockwater, and they've got, they're one of the different producers, including Midwest Natural Hemp Fiber, that are able to participate in the program with our Department of Agriculture on the reimbursement grant funding that came through, so that they'll have some support as they move forward with trying to develop this market. And it was nice to see something that I didn't think was going to happen this year, but that with Randall's project, he was able to actually offer forward contracts growing industrial hemp. And and he's putting up a small facility that needs 1,000 acres a year, but they're facilities that can be placed on a more regional basis all across the state. And so exciting to see the first of those things come online. And I think one of the things that with Missouri Hemp Trade Association that we try to promote is that the business that we do in state with each other, between retail stores, suppliers, wholesale, processing, that we can overcome some of the really big burdens in the market right now, because wholesale prices on hemp commodities, whether it's on the medicinal side, the food side, the hemp side, the fiber side, have crashed by 80% since we started this program 3 years ago. And most of that is because many states have come online. Many people have tried and not had a market before they planted, and they're trying to recover costs. And those costs have been considered benchmarks for what a fair price in the industry is. And I think one of the things that we need to advocate for is understanding what a fair price really is. When we purchase something, especially on the wholesale side, and it doesn't support the cost of production, then we're not building a supply chain. We're not supporting our industry, and we're not supporting the customer at the end who relies on us. But what I've also seen in the last 3 years is that the customer price has not changed. So there's a disconnect there that we need to make up for internally as an industry. And now that we've been able to enter into our 3rd year, there are a lot of people that have stuck it out, put their necks on the line, and understand what that means, and aren't willing to sell for less than the cost of production, and establish a real baseline for the industry so that we can move forward, so that we can afford education, so that we can afford research, so that we can afford to support our families and the people that engage in this on a daily basis. And I think that's what we really need to protect. I do think that the efficiencies are important, but I've also seen in many, many instances where the failures have just been turned into cost recovery efforts that have set a lower and lower bar for the industry, when we need to be setting a higher and higher bar on quality, and at the same time deliver something in a way where we have a customer base, and the customer means the end user. And even beyond that, I do want to point out that there are companies in Missouri that have been utilizing hemp and never experienced the 80 years of prohibition. It's always been legal in the country. It's always been utilized by our industries. We have strong industries, whether that's Boeing, Chrysler, pick your company. In aerospace, across the food space, it's just that we brought it in from other parts of the world. And it's time that we say, we are here, we are the agricultural base of this country. And it's time that we supply from locally supplied sources. 1% commitment across corporations across this state that have utilized hemp for the last 80 years would rocket Missouri ahead of the rest of the entire country. I think so. To address the economics of the situation, I'm excited to see that contracts are starting to come forward. There's contracts being offered in our state from out of state for grain products. There are really wonderful genetics that are coming in that are being utilized commercially and being researched and developed across the board. There's so many wonderful directions for this to go for our state.
Thank you. Heather, do you have feedback on markets in your area? How it look like over the medical side?
So I think that was very well put by everybody about that topic. This year, so I grew for research and personal use. I did not take my hemp production to market.
But let's go to the next question. Last one. Since we are dealing with all regulations to grow hemp, the survey showed that there are some concerns. So what would you respond to what extent, if you are a farmer, are you willing to increase your production size based on our current regulation to grow hemp? Like, what will it take for us to influence, or how we can influence a more benefit environment so people take the risk to grow hemp instead of right now there is no even insurance to grow. Nobody wants to insure a hemp grower. So what is your feedback in this point? Any one of you can provide any comment.
I could give a really simple answer to that, maybe.
Okay.
And this is what I encourage everyone with, is that please don't plant beyond who your customer is, and don't make your customer another business that gives you a contract because they think they might have a customer. I've seen so many of those fall apart over the years, and where I've seen really strong success is whether it's from the larger distribution side or whether it's from small farms that, you know, third, fourth generation farms that are creating a farm brand. They grow to who their customer base is, and they know who that customer is. Even on the fiber side, the people that are having success on fiber already have a market for animal bedding, and they know that at a minimum they can turn it. or they have an allied company that already has an output and a real direction for it to go. So increasing the size of your output should never be about what your assumptions of the market are. They should be what you know about your customer and who you serve, because that's how we build a really strong industry with a solid base. At the end of the day, it comes to who we are obligated to take care of and what is most important, and that is ensuring the satisfaction and safety of our end consumer and making sure that we take care of them, whether they're patients, whether they're buying a shirt, whether they're buying food or getting a nice granola bar. It's what's important.
Yeah, that was very well said. I definitely would agree with that advice, and having proper contracts in place before planning on growing 100 acres. Just you need to have your due diligence there and have everything in place as to not have some sort of issues there. That's why I started very small. Last year was my first year growing hemp in Missouri, so definitely interested at some point in increasing my production to hemp flower is what I grew last year, but also industrial hemp for fiber purposes at some point. However, that's definitely going to be have to be well thought out and planned, as to not just plan to have somebody that might buy it for some possible use and not have any sort of plans in place or contracts for the sale of it.
Yeah, we had a comment from Joe Leonard. I'm reading this because Miss Karen has to go because it's going to snow. He say, as a third year producer, yes, he thinks the regulations are fine. We just need market. He agree with Taylor, and we need to have contracts in place before we start growing. That's good feedback. Anybody else want to share concerns?
I think in my experience over the last number of years and seeing where things have succeeded and failed, the strongest contracts are based on who you're working with locally next door. And we have to, at some point, also stand together as an industry and set standards that, as I spoke earlier, allow for a market that doesn't have pricing built into it that's lower than the cost of production when you go to sell your work. And that's a simple thing to do. But it relies on smaller local supply chains and relationships. And those relationships are very important to build. To use the flower industry, for example, there are local retailers that are willing to spend 4 times the amount of what the open market price is per pound of flour for something that is done well by a local farm and bring it to the table. And that's a price that's sustainable for the farm. It's sustainable for the retailer. The retailer, instead of making a 1,000% margin, is making a normal Keystone margin so that they can maintain their stores and take care of their employees and their families, but so can the farm. But that relies on personal relationships and going out there and finding a network of people that you can work with that are either bringing that brand to the table or working directly with us. And it's about confidence. It's about people not wanting to go buy something for the cheapest price and get for the cheapest price possible on the supply side and delivering it to the market at the most expensive price that they can. And that's true for every industry. And eventually people lose patience for that. In our third year, I'm seeing people lose patience for that. And I'm seeing that people who are out there trying to do a good job and taking the time to build those relationships are getting paid prices that are fair. And at the same time, it also cuts out 10 different levels of consultation and intermediaries that are also stripping the market out. It's important to understand within a developing market that nobody can stand in and take something that's outside the scope of what normal business is. There are normal margins for manufacturing. There are normal margins for farming. There are normal margins for retail. And if you take all of those things into account and you look at it as a normal chain of business, then the reality is that everybody should be profiting more, be much more successful than they are, and prices to our finished customer, who's the basis of all of us being able to stand on our feet, should be much more affordable. But all of those pieces that are in between have had to disappear, and Missouri is not going through any hardship that every other state hasn't already gone through in their first 2 to 3 years of trying to prop an industry up and see good players stay the course and establish it, and bad players fade away while we normalize this market and create something that truly is sustainable.
That sounds great. We had few minutes left. This one there is. Jeff, you had final comments on this question, or that's it?